The next panel will be devoted to infrastructure and achievements related to that. I would like to ask the moderator, representative of the ICT department of the Ministry of Economy, to moderate and open and moderate the next session. Hello, Ucha. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking part in the conference. As we speak about internet governance, this would be impossible without broadband internet. So I'll start and then give the floor to other panelists. I wish to mention before we start that we're limited in time. There's a lot of speakers to appear. So please keep to the 5-minute rule so that we're able to also take questions at the end. In terms of development of the broadband internet, a few words about the events that the ministry has undertaken to develop broadband internet. Mr. Graham has discussed, has mentioned the strategy approved last year. With the technical and financial assistance of the European Union, we developed the strategy, which is completely consonant with the EU policy, which is 1 gigabyte per second. And also the plan is to cover the entire territory of Georgia with 4G internet. 4G is already applicable in Georgia. We're just talking about covering the entire territory, which means 100 gigabytes, 100 megabytes access to 100 megabytes by internet users. And we're testing 1 gigabyte per second in three municipalities. So these are the figures envisaged by the current strategy. The strategy is not only about broadband internet coverage, but it also, as we speak about broadband infrastructure, internet infrastructure, it's also important to raise awareness of the population and the digital skills of the population in that direction. So the strategy also envisages steps to raise the informedness of the population about broadband internet, access to broadband internet, and will use the OpenNet and communications commissions and other partners to achieve the goals that I've just discussed, that are goals that are set by the strategy. The broadband internet will cover the entire territory of Georgia. Every citizen and everyone in Georgia will have access to this internet speed. The government has started state internetization program. We have Marika Sulaberice, chief of OpenNet, who will discuss these strategies and measures in detail. And now, as I said, the target according to the project is 20 to 25 megabytes. But if we can't cover villages and settlements with less than 200 inhabitants, and these are mainly high mountain regions where businesses don't want to develop their own private network. In that case, the government, there's a Ministry of Economy, will continue subsidizing and providing state support to internetization. We conducted 2 internetization projects in Tusheti and Khersoleti. Government supported internetization projects. And of course, credit should be paid to not only the Ministry of Economy, but to many donors, many partners, and extremely great thanks for support and building the network to the medium and small telecom operators association that supervise the project, and also to the donors. Our next step in terms of community internetization is going to be the Ajara region, specifically the montane part of Ajara region, and in parallel we'll be working with OpenNet to cover those places that commercial internet will not be covered by commercial internet. And another thing to mention, when it comes to development of the broadband internet, will be supporting, the government will be supporting businesses and telecom operators to develop their business. We've drafted a bill on internet infrastructure, and the bill will work to minimize the costs of operators to build their infrastructure everywhere in Georgia. So it's about also sharing infrastructure with telecom operators. And for example, to give you a clear example, take natural gas power, and while the builder is building a house, it takes into account already that the house will need gas supply and water supply. So much like this, all the builders will, mandatorily take into account that the building is going to need internet. This would certainly ease the job of telecom operators to hook future internet users of newly built homes to the internet. Now, another priority, according to the strategy, is a digital hub. Georgia is determined to turn itself into a digital hub, which means international so it means optical fiber connectivity on the one hand, but on the other hand, it means turning Georgia into a digital center for the regional players, and also to attract the big players such as Facebook, Amazon, so that they are interested in forming a regional hub in Georgia, so that they can deliver different services from Georgia to the neighboring countries. These are the major things that are upcoming according to the strategy, and the other events. For more information, please visit the Internet Development Strategy of the Georgian government. If you have any questions, you can address those questions to us. We've started with the World Bank working on a strategy to develop. So we'll be developing another internet strategy with the World Bank. We have different interested stakeholders involved, and of course, when the strategy draft, we'll be discussing that draft with you and with other partners. The strategy will be about development of electronic services, both the state government offered and private services. Thank you so much for your attention. This is what I wanted to say. So I will end the speech, I'd say, on behalf of the Ministry of Economy, but my colleague Marika Slabedze from OpenNet will take it over in terms of internetization, continuation of state strategies. Many thanks to the organizers for holding this conference, and many thanks for inviting me as well. I'll be speaking in a few words, some novelties and news from the general government internalization program. OpenNet is working to deliver broadband internet connection to regions of Georgia. We started active work in that regard in June 2020. First pilot project was launched. And in fact, I'm proud to say that the first pilot project is now completed in Ozurgeti, and not only we conducted the network, but this network already has consumers today, and local telecom operators are using our network to deliver their services to the population. I think the major value of the project is to give local operators so-called our middle mile to deliver high quality internet through our network to the population. So that's the biggest value of it. Another designation of OpenNet is the pilot project that's been run in Kobuleti municipality. It will be completed. The Kobuleti project will be completed by the end of this year. And so we certainly hope that this other project is going to be as successful as the Ozurgeti project. We pay visits to regions to see where we can deliver our services, and we see so high preparedness on the part of the population, a lot of willingness we see from the local inhabitants. They want to access internet, and they're very, eager to see to see us working, and this of course motivates us to be more active in implementing our project. Now, as regards the World Bank backed login project, the project is entitled Login. Login Georgia project involves not only the building of infrastructure, but the project is quite broad. It covers facilitation of the Ministry of Economy and Communications Commission in regulation issues. One of the big components of that project is digital awareness program, which Mrs. Eka has mentioned. She talked about importance of digital awareness. And it's important that within the Login Georgia project, in the regions where OpenNet will build the infrastructure, it will also conduct awareness raising campaigns. The communications campaign, the commission is leading in that regard. They've started communication awareness raising activities in Ozurgeti, and probably when the commission's time comes, they will be speaking in more detail about this. They will be covering also and involving different community groups such as women, children, people with disabilities, and they will be conducting training courses in that regard. As for the training, this year we've been working actively with the World Bank experts to develop a concept design for the country. So we selected a topic for the future tenders. As you know, until 2025, we have time until 2025 to cover 5,000 kilometers. Documentation has already been prepared, and we announced 2 tenders in Raja and Lechumi. By the end of the year, we'll be announcing 2 more tenders, and we hope we'll be getting quotations from the construction companies, the building companies, and we'll hope to accelerate the tempo, because we see a lot of motivation on the part of population. We see a lot of readiness on the part of local inhabitants. So that's in short, in briefs, and if there are any questions, I'm here to take them. Thank you, Marika. Marika has mentioned Login, Georgia. I didn't discuss that project because Mariam wanted was to cover those issues, and the Communications Commission, GNCC, is one of our important partners. We can't, of course, achieve our goals without GNCC. And now I would like to ask Ekaterina Medadze on behalf of the GNCC to say a couple of words. Yes, thank you very much. Greetings to the participants. I'll be speaking about continuing with the market issues from the perspective of the regulating commission. The role of GNCC, as we see it, as a facilitator of this process, internetization process. So I'll be discussing both from the regional point of view of Georgia becoming a regional hub, and also our future plans as GNCC. We live now in what people call post-pandemic epoch. And quality of the connectivity has a new bet has been made on the quality of internet connectivity. The pandemic gave a great stimulus in terms of accelerating all the digital technologies, including the quality and speed of internet. One of the things that I would like to mention is a document published by the European Regulators Association. The document sets 4 major directions in which Europe will be working, which the other world, the other parts of the world can take an example of. So the 4 objectives of Europe. So if digital equality means, first of all, existence and accessibility of infrastructure. This is something what Login Georgia project is about. Another major direction is accessibility of services to the consumers, the economic accessibility and choice. Number 3 is the so-called digital literacy. Something Communications Commission has been working on very actively. Last week we completed a week of digital or media literacy, which was about increasing media awareness of the population. Number four, the 4th element is that the digital literacy should be bringing economic profits, especially for the small and medium enterprises, which is small and medium operators in our case. It is the small and medium operators who should become, the mediators who deliver, or middlemen who are to deliver the services to the actual consumers. As for the plans of the GNCC and how we view the future in internetization, there was an IT forum of regulators in 2021, and today a winged phrase was that regulators' role has been expanded, and they have turned into facilitators. And yes, we also regard ourselves, GNCC, as not only a regulator but also as a facilitator. The first thing we'll be working on is harmonization of regulatory environment, which trickles down to two issues. First, it's the regulatory framework, and we're trying to harmonize our framework with the European regulations. It will also facilitate the transparency of local investment environment. It also is to attract foreign investment. So we need this infrastructure so that foreign investors can understand and safely invest in Georgia. The other direction that we'll be working is a competitive environment. And this is why we use harmonized regulations to guarantee competition. In order to guarantee competition, we regulate the barriers to enter the market.
So I go back to the ambitious goal that we have to remove the barriers for the entry to the market, and it must be accessible for the operators. The network, the communication, in order to provide, to deliver to the final consumer this product, and also just to introduce new technologies as fast as possible. We also have some other the projects, for instance, the holistic study or survey of the market, and you already approved it. It will be through the technical the support of the European Union. That's the TAIEX project, and within which we are going just to consider the context of the telecommunication market, what type of barriers exist there for the players of the market. It will be for both mobile market as well as for the fixed one, as well as the evaluation of the internet. I would like to identify here very hot topics. That is again the virtual mobile operator, and as well as the introduction of the big stream to the market. Another direction we are going to work on, and is also related to the internet forum, the agenda, that is the preconditions for the market in order to realize the internet exchange point, so the XP, and what is necessary to be done in the market in order to encourage it, including the peering as well as the mutual connection, etc. We plan to work in this direction, and I would like to connect it to the ambitions which we have in the country related to the broadband strategy. If we would like to become the leader in the region and to have the digital hub in Georgia. And that's why it is quite important to have all the preconditions which I have already enlisted above. Another direction the Commission is working on, and one of my colleagues will be speaking about it in a more detailed manner, that is the introduction of the new type of the internet, and we have already made some steps ahead because we extended the interest with regard to the fifth generation of the network, and more details will be introduced by my colleague. Another direction I would like to be mentioned here, with your permission, and when it comes to the digital the economy, we need, of course, so-called the digital map. providing the market players to have the information, to have the ideas of what type of communication market and infrastructure we have in Georgia. This is also very important for the foreign investors, where there are the specific niches and also what type of the services it can provide. And the last maybe, or one more, let's say, uh, yeah, so-called the last but not least important direction where we see our role is that we need to secure, to ensure our implementation in creating the legislative frame within which, first of all, we think about the critical infrastructure regulation, regulation about the sharing of the internet network, as well as the other, I would say, very important regulating the bills. Cybersecurity is another field where we also need the development of the regulation and many other issues. So, for the reason of summarizing, I would like to remind you that it is really very important to have very close cooperation with the different institutions, with the ministry, but most important is the involvement of all the stakeholders, including the operators. Then another ambition which we have, that is the environment of the regulating framework, because here active position of the operators is really very important. We mean here all type of the players, the smaller, bigger, etc. So this type of the approach will enable us to improve the situation and to have the good, even exemplary regulating environment. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free and I can, of course, respond. Thank you very much, Mr. Katarina. I would like to remind to the audience, if you have any questions, you can also put the question in the chat using the Zoom. And if you have any questions from the audience, please feel free. Yeah, I agree to the Communication Commission that the private sector is one of the most important institution, or let's say the part of the society, and we really need to develop the environment which will be more attractive for them. We have to ease their activities and their life in order just to provide the different type of these services to our population. Also, I would like to mention, but it was already referred from the Commission, from the side of the Deputy Minister, the COVID pandemic really demonstrated the importance, even more importance of the infrastructure, of, the internet infrastructure, and we, the Ministry of Infrastructure, have this special obligation to coordinate this sphere if there is any crisis situation. And we did it. We coordinated more than 300 the operators, including the postal operators during the lockdown. And this cooperation was very effective. We also encouraged them, we facilitated them, and we tried to solve their problems. And what I have seen there, that is their social responsibility, their dedication and the commitment in order not to impede for instance, the educational processes, the distance learning, and others and others. And again, I would like to thank the operators. Now I would like to ask the Hatuna engineer, the General Consulate of the new systems and the networks. Welcome everybody. It's a great honor for me to participate in this forum, because we believe that this type of the challenges shall be really discussed at this type of the fora, because now we have to translate the ideas into the construction of the new networks and the new systems. Thank you very much. We also heard about the evaluation, estimation done by the governmental agencies, as well as it was quite interesting to hear the our European partners' visions of them with regard of Georgia and Georgia's development. I represent the group of companies which has the broadband infrastructure on the bottom of the Black Sea, which is connected with the Russian Federation, crossing the entire territory of Georgia, and also is linked with Turkey down to the south to Azerbaijan and Armenia. Therefore, it is very critical to hear the views of our state with regard of the broadband development as well as the fast internet access. But now I also would like to present from our side the problems and challenges as well as the vision what we, the private sector, are facing in this particular field. Without the participation of the state, it is impossible to even have the dream for implementing such the comprehensive programs. But so also state cannot implement this type of the project without very active involvement of the private sector. Every well-developed and the free market is based on the private sector. The private sector is the power which creates the market, which provides the services, and which in fact is a critically important, and especially when it comes to the crisis, as Miseka mentioned, the entire private sector was involved, participated in the process of overcoming the COVID-19, the aftermath. Otherwise, we cannot speak about the economic development. So we believe that protection of the private sector, implementation of the legislative changes are very important for our country, and it has to become the priority of our state. We also need to attract the attention of our European partners because it can encourage the development of the broadband system. Maybe in this in the legislation field, association agreement is the most important document because it also includes the electronic communication. And another is the directive adopted by the Council of Europe and the European Commission. That's a code of we call it the code or CODA, and we do believe that these two documents make the basement today, which we have to take into account, and Georgian legislation has to be approximated to the demands and the requirements which are well invested there. Unfortunately, we are quite behind of those legislative pieces of the legislation, and I welcome the initiative of the Commission with regard of the harmonization. But in order to have the good implementation of the harmonization process, we have to make decisive steps. We've been waiting for them, but we fail to see very good, specific, and concrete steps ahead. The first legislative, the act, which really requires very fast the reorganization and its compliance with this to document. This is the law on the electronic communications. And the first changes, first amendments, let's say the key aspects I would like to underline there because we think that they need very the timely changes. First and foremost, that is the scope of the regulations, the framework of the Communication Commission, and goals and objectives of the regulation must be clearly identified, reviewed, and put in compliance with the requirements of the association agreement as well as with the European Code. Because we need to understand what market is regulated what is the key subject of the regulation. So, you know that the broadband development is the key issue here, as well as the access to it. Also, European document explains the strategies, how to we have to pursue this way. When we speak about the scope of the regulation of the Commission, first and foremost, it has to put in compliance or in harmony with the association agreement and the code. The second important challenge with regard of the electronic communication, that is the transparency of the budget of the Commission, and as well as the evaluation of its purposeful expenditure. In the European Code, you find the special provision which says that the financial independence of the regulating commission shall not be equalized or understood in a way that its expenditure is not audited or checked and controlled by the relevant bodies. In our country, we have the specific law, that is a law on the state audit, which also really requires some changes. And we think that the control over the budget expenditure and its purposefulness must become the key issue for the development of the financial resources. And it must be also included in the important strategies, because the existing strategies do not comply with the modern requirements, European standards I talked about above. And the third key issue in the law of the electronic communication is maybe the latest change. And you remember we had quite a critical the conclusion from the Venice Commission. These changes must be improved, and it must be the objective of the Commission and not of the private sector. It must be also the objective of the European partners, or those who are working on the harmonization of the legislation and sharing of those conclusions and observations made by the Venice Commission. First and foremost, there's the protection of the private property, which is grossly violated through the changes and amendments made recently in the law. So, this is the constitutional right, and violation of the property right creates the huge barrier for the development of the infrastructure, for attracting the new investments, etc., etc. And first and foremost, it is really very bad for the future development, because if we would like to be for instance, the hub in the region, or even the Silk Road, like we are the positioned in Europe, we need to think about it. Another important challenge, which is quite problematic, and you already talked about it, but again, I would like to draw your attention to this issue, that is the law on sharing the infrastructure, and you mentioned about it. 2 years already, draft law has been prepared, but it is still on a table or maybe on a shelf. Please, maybe you will tell us what type of new the steps you are going to make in this direction. Another is the law on the e-commerce, which also is not developed. We haven't seen this law. Another is the definition of the critical infrastructure, as well as the attitude of the government to the critical infrastructure is very important. Another is the digitalization of the state institutions, and here really you need the involvement of the private sector. Here I mean the legal companies, economies as well as the agrarian markets. Another important issue it's here energy systems, which is related to the green energy. And today we have so important the new projects in this field because all of them are related to the development of the broadband, the system development, as well as the sharing of the infrastructure, because we have so much expenditure with regard of the energy sector. And another is the construction and the local municipality digitalization would be very important because we need to breed the demand requirement which in the future would provide us with the possibility to use these systems. The systems we are speaking about, Ms. Natali made a very good the remark with regard of the involvement of the private sector as well as the participation, not only sharing the information, but implementation of the new projects through their involvement. It can speed up the processes and it will be very important for both the public and private interests and implementation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hatuna. Yes, I would like to remind our speakers to confine themselves within the time for 5 minutes, maybe, not more. Thank you very much, Hatuna. I really wished to hear from the side of the private sector to hear about the works implemented by private the sectors. However, we heard more questions here because you know that we have this special session for Q&A. Yes, it is important to have the state sector's involvement, Minister of Economy, whenever any the bill on any act is being developed. Of course, we take into account the visions, approaches of the different stakeholders. It was about the Green Georgia, it was about the broadband project, etc., etc., including the digital economy strategy elaboration. You know that we have the working group because we always have the priority to invite the private sector, not only private sector, but all the stakeholders. Yeah, I will respond to your questions. It would be Miseka, I also would like to respond. You know, I just put all the questions and I'll try to respond to her afterwards. Okay, now about the commitments and the obligations under the association agreement, we know that we have those obligations. We know the directives you talked about, and the part of our obligations, we have already elaborated the draft laws from our side, from the side of the Commission. We already agreed on them. When it comes to the code, Georgia has no such obligation because that is a case that must be decided at the political level because it's a new code. Even for the European countries, even they have not implemented so far. Only a few European countries, some parts of the code, they achieved the harmonization of their national legislations. So whenever we have the political decision, we can consider, of course, the different elements of the code. The topics we are speaking about now, the place, which is about, of course, without the international cooperation, it is absolutely impossible. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Peter Dunn, the representative of the European Union in Georgia. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter.
Thank you very much also. I'm happy to be here with you, and of course there have been already important topics mentioned, and I will start where you ended. Indeed, the regulatory and the legislative framework are important, and also policy coordination among state institutions and agencies, but also together with, of course, private sector. that's where we, as European Union, can be, I believe, helpful, and we will continue working also closely with all stakeholders in Georgia. I think one of the good examples is also the broadband strategy that was developed with EU funding and with cooperation with World Bank and all stakeholders actually. And this broadband strategy already defines some, I think, good elements when it comes to challenges and also perspectives for Georgia to develop the broadband network and also to become hopefully a digital hub in the near future. For based on these policy cooperation, of course, association agreement, etc., we also want to boost our cooperation in terms of connectivity, in terms of digitalization and green economy, and on that basis also recovery or economic recovery and development of SMEs in Georgia. So in July we adopted economic and investment plan for the cooperation between EU and Eastern Partnership countries, and also very specific flagship initiatives that we would like to support immediately in cooperation with Georgia. They are centered around exactly green and digital transformation and connectivity, direct connectivity between EU and Georgia. And there are very two specific examples. One is connection between European Union and Georgia through submarine cables. It means basically increasing substantially the capacities of cables between EU countries and Georgia, which should also enable Georgia to become actually digital hub if it comes to data traffic and transit of data between Georgia and different countries, not only EU countries, but also what is directly related to the topic of this panel is that we would like to support and continue supporting actually the development of the middle and last mile connections throughout regions in Georgia. Of course, we will be soon. I think what was already mentioned by OpenNet Agency is that there is already a drive to develop fiber optic for the middle connectivity in regions. We heard about Zugeti and Kubuletti, and I think there are good plans for the future, which we would like to support furthermore with the EU Bank, EIB, and together also with the World Bank when it comes to infrastructure, but also when it comes to last mile connectivity. As concerns the last mile connectivity, bringing the connections to households, this is something that needs to be, I think, discussed furthermore when it comes to technical solutions, but also financial possibilities. From our side, of course, we would like to support both, infrastructure, but also demand on the side of population. This can be done through different means. Raising awareness of population. It can be done through digitalization of local companies, but also digitalization of public services, which can, I think, take also the leading role in some region. For that purpose, of course, we will be soon deploying different projects, financed either directly or through our funds or indirectly through our bank, EIB. When it comes to direct financing, we are now finalizing the new program between EU and Georgia, which is called EU for Smart Development, Smart Economic Development. And this already foresees different initiatives in that respect. So just to summarize, for the last mile connectivity, it is on one hand supporting infrastructure wherever there is maybe a lack of commercial interest, but also in cooperation with state aids. And we heard about the plans to provide state aid in that respect, but also through developing digital skills and digital demand on the other side. And also, of course, the purpose is that the internet connection is not only available, but also affordable. That's something that we want to work closely together with Georgia. I hope I'm within my time limit and happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're running short of time, so I'd like to give the floor to the Internet Society.
Oh, hello, thank you.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. David, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak at the Georgia IGF. I want to give you a quick overview of the importance of IXPs. So IXPs are basically a technical infrastructure where networks come together to connect and exchange internet traffic. It's a good idea, IXPs, because they help making the internet cheaper and faster and also more efficient. So building
profile picture.
Profile
Building-
picture background.
a successful
아,
IXP,
şeyleri puanladık ama işte.
it's not just a technical engineering job.
Çizgi virtual background'ıymış.
Time and effort needs to be invested in developing trust, in developing also common understanding, and also signing mutual agreements in the local community. So this happens because many of the people and organizations that are involved in setting up an IXP are normally competitors. But by deciding to work together, they contribute to a better and more resilient local internet infrastructure. We say that an IXP to work, it is needed that it has a strong community in the foundation for its success. I am telling you all this because IXPs also bring more opportunities. They attract a range of local and international operators, and they also provide them with most cost-effective way to access potential local internet users. And all this creates business opportunities, and it encourages local people to produce more relevant local content and applications. So all this means that IXPs can be the seed to create a digital hub. The IXP itself will never play the role of a digital hub, but it can be a catalyzer for this to happen. It is the community that revolves around the IXP that enables more and more interconnection. And it is by adding more and more players to an IXP when we sometimes see this transformation happening. A large and diverse membership can transform the appearing infrastructure to a marketplace where IXP's members can buy different services that they need from other participants. We could picture this by thinking that the IXP can be a more general interconnection point in the broadest sense of the term, not only for traffic, also for the services they provide. And when this happens, they can attract even more operators, which see IXPs as a new business opportunity. The moderator of the panel has mentioned the importance of this type of marketplaces. So one of the needs of IXP participants is to know which operators sell which services and where and how they can consume these services themselves. We are seeing now some IXPs have built a marketplace portal, let's say, call it like that, marketplace portal, which aims to satisfy these needs. And these wholesale services, marketplaces can help members-based IXPs to strengthen their community and provide new useful services to the affiliates. The other topic I want to talk to you about is the virtual peering series for Central Asia that we are running at the Internet Society in collaboration with RIPE NCC and the European Internet Exchange Association. The objective of these events is to identify new prospective IXP operators in the region. We have celebrated 3 sessions already, and the last one will take place next week on December 7th. The first event identified the benefits of IXPs and the best practices with the aim of developing suitable approaches for local circumstances. The second event, back in July this year, focused on how IXPs can benefit the region and how to develop operator communities for a common purpose. The third one focused on what is required to implement a successful IXP from a technical point of view. And it also discussed this type of what I mentioned, marketplaces, the value-added services that can be located around an IXP. And it also gave an overview of how to implement the mutually agreed norms for routing security actions, the project that we call Manners at the Internet Society. So Central Asia has some of the highest connectivity costs in the world, but only a few IXPs exist. And they are needed to enable traffic to be exchanged locally between internet service providers. We are working a lot to improve the situation, and I know there's a time constraint, so I want to thank you for your attention here. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much. And now I'd like to give the floor to the World Bank representative, digital development specialist Himat Satu. As I said, the World Bank is partnering with us in a number of directions. They are helping us with the strategy. We're working on the digital economy. Civic Himat is personally involved in this, and please discuss the future, some of our future steps. Please go ahead.
Zalyan Digli Madhuba Eka and Gamarjaba Megobarevi. Also, I wish I was there in person, of course, but unfortunately, these times I'm making sure that we stay apart but utilize our internet bandwidth well. I think one of the big problems of going to speak after such distinguished institutions and speakers are being represented is that all the good points have already been taken. But let me just take this opportunity to perhaps point out all the good work that's already happened. We've all are still going through a severe crisis. And I think in times like these, one forgets to take a minute, to take a step back and actually look at everything that has happened. So I'd like to firstly thank the ministry for all the good work they've done over the last few years by taking the lead on the broadband strategy, by now coordinating the digital economy strategy that is under development through the infrastructure sharing law, and having this lead and coordination role on the policy making side. Comcom for the good work that they're doing in improving the regulatory environment, in really looking forward, and Eka really listed out a lot of these great initiatives that we need to look forward to. OpenNet, that has been able to launch its operations recently and completed pilot phases, and as of the last month have also started commercial operations. But most of all, the private sector operators, large, medium and small. The pandemic would not have been able to, the effects of the pandemic would have been far, far worse if it wasn't for the private sector operators that have been able to mobilize their resources, that were able to provide no-cost connectivity for certain types of content, and that were really able to support the public sector in delivering the services they need to deliver in terms of health, education, digital financial services to citizens, businesses, as well as the government institutions. However, all of us know that there's still a long way to go over here, and maybe not. I shouldn't spend too much time trying to talk about the importance of the internet today and how it drives digital inclusion. We've all now experienced it. We all understand what's going to happen here. But let's look at how it enables future growth. Georgia has been doing excellently well in terms of its private sector on the digital economy side that is trying very hard to use government, to use internet-driven technologies and internet-driven services to really drive export-oriented future growth. There is an ambition to become a digital hub. There is an ambition to become a logistics hub as well. And the country's been working towards this. And none of this, yet again, is going to happen without the private sector. Perhaps looking forward, what we need to do is work towards this specialization within the private sector as well. As the government needs to look towards the private sector partners to create and mobilize these resources, the OpenNet program too provides an opportunity for retail ISPs to really deliver the kind of high-speed connectivity that citizens demand and need today. Similarly, there will be IT and IT-enabled services companies that will be able to provide the kind of support that the government needs to really deliver public services. At the same time, it'll be great to see the private sector also specialize within their own space and open up things like the IT backend, the networks, and so on to other specialized firms. Hence, creating what our colleague from ISOC and mentioned about, the hubs and the community of digitally enabled firms that can actually create a digital marketplace. So perhaps this is a direction on the use side that we need to start focusing on. And this is something that through the World Bank's work on digital, the support to the ministry and the government overall on the digital economy strategy, hopefully that could be something that provides these kind of anchors. But not only is the internet and broadband a driver of growth and an enabler of the economy, But in Georgia and in the South Caucasus, today there's a chance for it to even expand and become a bigger sector in itself. So we know that Georgia is leading. I think it's leading even all EU counterparts in terms of fiber deployment as a share of total broadband subscribers in the country. So we know that that market is only going to grow as we connect more and more rural areas, and as the adoption has increased, the demand for such connectivity is also going to. However, one space which has been alluded to repeatedly by the various panelists before me has been to look at Georgia as a digital hub and to enable Georgia to leverage its position, and the South Caucasus region widely as well, to leverage its position to be a connector between Europe and different parts of Asia. Similarly, to make that happen, what we, again, without the private sector, nothing's going to work. But what we also identify and see over here is that this is such a large opportunity in terms of economic returns, financial returns, that hopefully the private sector would be able to mobilize its financing with support from the government to do the requisite introductions, connections, and coordination across international borders to ensure that such a dream could indeed be realized. If we talk about some specifics around there, some drivers of why the South Caucasus and Georgia in particular could really be this interconnector between continents is the fact that today there are a lot of choke points across the submarine connectivity network. We have the Suez Canal. You've seen in the physical world how that has really disrupted trade, logistics across the world. But imagine if all the submarine cables going through the Suez Canal also find some disruption like that taking place. Terrestrial routes are increasingly becoming more attractive to private sector operators. International connectivity is also now largely driven by content providers. All of us, I'm sure, in our personal lives, end up using a lot of these large content provider services, which eventually are taking up roughly, they say, about 60% of global internet bandwidth. As the content providers try to move the services closer to consumers, they too want alternate routes. And the shortest route at the end of the day between Europe and Asia is through the South Caucasus. This provides an opportunity for the private sector operators, if they're able to coordinate well across the neighborhood, to really drive greater investment in the Black Sea, terrestrial connectivity, and across the Caspian as well, to ensure that this kind of corridors could really be connected. But none of this can happen without coordination and without cooperation across borders. And we hope that the World Bank can play a critical role over here through our convening to be able to help the various stakeholders come together. And most importantly, we hope that the private sector is excited to see this opportunity and is able to invest in this going forward. So I think I'm a little bit over time, so thank you.
Thank you so much. We're expecting the first draft. You're talking about coordination, so this draft will help us, and we'll share to the draft with the private sector. We have an online. Thank you so much. We have an online moderator from the Communications Commission, International Relations. Chief of International Relations, do we have online questions? Please tell us what questions did we receive this far? That's yes, actually there's quite an active discussion going on in the chat, and I've selected some of the questions. The first question is about digital literacy, and here's the question. In local authorities, in local training, local employees, local officials is a challenge. Is there any strategy about this? It would be good to work with the Public Services Bureau to develop a training course for local government employees. Shall we take questions first? Okay, I'll answer this question quickly. Yes, there are lots of training courses are given to local public officials, not only on internet, but also other issues. economic ministry's HR department is working a lot on this. I've been discussing digital literacy training courses as well. When we start digital literacy project with the Communications Commission, this project will cover also local authorities. Other question is prices for wholesale internet. It says, when will this unreasonably high prices for wholesale internet be reduced? Yeah. And we will move to the gigabyte to internet connectivity. Yes, well, I partially answered this question. On our agenda, we still have a research of the wholesale internet market, including for the purpose of regulating prices on that market. Quite a number of steps have already been taken and the prices have been liberalized. However, especially for small and medium, for the sake of accessibility of local and medium providers, it's necessary that we look into the current situation. We actually have started a needs assessment project, so we're researching this area right now. The next question is about how to accelerate the internetization. So the question is, why wouldn't you offer tax refunds in exchange for covering certain areas, for example, Raja or montane regions? So why won't you offer tax rebates to companies in exchange for covering certain areas and not on remote areas? Yes, I was talking about internetization and some of the pilot projects. I think the OpenNet project is developing very quickly in an accelerated manner. We first of all needed to focus on the dead zones where, operators didn't have interest in entering those zones, and the government is not providing internet itself in that zones. It helps the private sector deliver services to those zones. So we covered those issues with the European experts, and we finally arrived at a decision. Also taking into consideration the terrain and the local problems, the best way would be for the government to start the OpenNet, what we call the OpenNet project. So OpenNet is building so to say a backbone for the private service to then deliver those services to those remote areas. And finally, the last question is it's more of a wish, than a question. Why wouldn't the ministry and the GNCC arrange public discussions on urgent issues that are interesting to the population? Well, first of all, I want to say the ministry is open to everyone. UCHA covers many telecom operators. We have at least 2 meetings every month with UCHA. Whenever we prepare legal amendments or we prepare a draft law, all the operators are involved. So if you want to have additional meetings, we can discuss this. We can agree on more meetings. It's important to work with all the stakeholders. The business, the big partners, the ministry, and other regulators such as the competition agency and the National Bank of Georgia. we're open, and once again, we subscribe to this openness. If there are, recommendations on how to improve our openness, we're ready to that as well. I think Ucha wanted to say something. We have this. There are some restrictions, as I understand. Just a second, can't hear the voice. I'd like to ask everyone to please stick to the time constraints. We don't want to limit you. Just please give due regard to our translators. Please keep to the. Let's respect their work, and please keep to the. And let's respect the quality they need to deliver. The translators need to deliver, which is very important. Now, to summarize the messages, can we ask 2 or 3 minutes? Hatuna, so because we're intruding into Keti's session, so please 2 or 3 minutes, then summary, and then I didn't have any questions to the regulator. I thought those questions were to me. It's important to us to listen to what businesses have to say, and we're open to this. You raised a number of important issues, and I think I feel the need to answer them. With the Ministry of Economy, we're working on telecom code. The process was open. The package, the set of changes has been drafted and sent out. As for the new draft law, only a few European countries have adopted the law, so this far the new telecom code, the framework for the new telecom code, this is being discussed, including within the format of EU-Georgia Association Agreement obligations. Last time, an evaluation of independence of the regulators was produced, and the reports about regulators and the GNCC's independence, the report about GNCC's independence was open to everyone, and our commission, GNCC, has received quite high marks, good evaluation. And in terms of financial transparency, the GNCC has received a very high assessment. If you still think there's room for improvement, there's something to change, we're ready to work with you. However, the document I'm referring to was open and accessible to everyone. As for participation in legal amendments, if there is initiative from businesses, and they have suggestions on how to amend the law or the draft bill, we're ready to this. I'd like to clarify a little bit. Eka said a set of amendments into the law on communications was prepared. The Ministry of Economy got involved. I'm just telling you this story, the different stages we went through. So the Ministry of Economy discussed it with the GNCC together, and our expectation was to adopt a law on competition. Also, something that has been envisaged by the EU-Georgia Association Agreement. There were some cross-cutting issues, and those issues could not be regulated by one and the same issues could not be regulated by two laws: the competition law and communications law. The new draft law is ready, so I won't go into more details. About sharing infrastructure, the bill has been sent to the first reading of the parliament, and we hope that the second and third readings will take place, and the draft bill will turn into an actual law. I'm sorry, I tried to keep to the time. We had other questions we couldn't take because of the time restraints. I apologize to Katie. So we'll start tomorrow with Katie's introduction into 5G. Mr. Stanesky, who's going to moderate this session. I just for your attention, I put my apologies to Katie because we introduced it in her time. She'll start tomorrow with 5G. So to summarize those messages, please just a very quick, very short comment for half a minute. You have half a minute. I'm glad that the speech has become turned into something, into a food for discussion. And yes, my speech concerned the challenges the state sector is facing. Thanks for your comments, but at the same time, it's important to do the work.
In fact, we had many challenges, but later on I will tell you additionally very briefly. Okay, we made the P2P network, which is unique network in Georgia because it's the biggest one. It just can, by the way, communicate, and the competitors do not have this type of the internet. Therefore, we are the best one in Georgia. We think that is due to the high qualification of our team and the strategy which we are following. Because Ms. Eka really wanted to hear about our achievements. Thank you very much. We really have very interesting discussion. First and foremost, one message we have to speak about here. When it comes to the IGF, the forum, maybe we can take this initiative and also to plan some interim meetings before we have the forum, how we take these challenges. We maybe need more platforms to have some 3 or 4 hour meetings. It can be online or offline about this type of the issues. But again, I would like to say that our association has no problem with this regard. Maybe others also join us. That would be very good opportunity. Then maybe we need also to put in our messages the promises that is provided by the Ministry of Economy. It also will be put in the messages. The next, we would like to ask to the Regulating Commission the presentation which you have already planned for the next year, because we would like it to be put in our annual report. The same applies to Ms. Marika, because maybe the next year the plans we need to put into the messages. we need more discussion, more dialogue, and more communication. And if we have the sort of lack of the communication, we have to be open because if you would like to have the further consideration, forum can support it. We already heard about the international support. We heard about the promises, and we are really very thankful to them. And we of course put it also in our annual report. If you don't mind, let's finish this session. These messages will be invested in the proposals. And thanks a lot to all of you. I would apologize to Ms. Katie because no, we postponed the intervention, and maybe we have to do it tomorrow. That is about the protection of the consumers, and together with that panel session participants, we will hear her presentation. Maybe now we have only some 2 minutes break, and I would like to ask the next speakers to prepare themselves. And we start the next one. It's about the pandemic and the challenge